The Climate Action Reserve is the most experienced and trusted offset registry to serve the carbon markets. As more organizations look to combat climate change and support environmental projects with true integrity, they turn to the reserve to foster real solutions and reductions in greenhouse gas emissions. We are excited to kick off the second series of Carbon Connection and feature external partners with insights and expertise in particular climate sectors and topics across the carbon market. I am your host, Lauren Napuk, and thank you for joining us. Hi, welcome to our next episode of Carbon Connection. Today, we are speaking with Lisa DeMarco, a senior partner and the CEO at Resilient LLP. With over 25 years of experience, Lisa is called to the bar in Canada and England and is recognized as a global expert in climate and energy law. In addition, Lisa is ranked by Chambers Global as one of the world's leading climate change lawyers and regularly attends and advises on United Nations climate negotiations. Today, I'm very excited to speak with Lisa about what lies ahead in Dubai at the upcoming 28th Conference of Parties, better known as COP28. Lisa, thank you for joining us.
Lauren, it's so good to be here with you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. It's great to have you. Now, Lisa, just to briefly kick us off, what is the COP conference and why does COP matter?
COP is the annual negotiations. In fact, there are 6 parallel negotiations that go on in and around the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. And really, it's the annual event where we start to implement and progress the Paris Agreement. We tidy up what happened under the Kyoto Protocol. The technical bodies of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change meet and have developments and input into the process. And there are updates that happen each year for the member parties. We're leading into a very significant time called the global stocktake, where we're trying to figure out what the next 5-year period is going to look like.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That's really helpful for us to understand why this is such an important year for COP. It always is important, but looking at this global stocktake is even more important. And what are the Paris Agreement and Article 6, and why are they important, as well as how will they be addressed at COP?
Paris Agreement was the agreement that the world arrived at in 2015 to really move away from a top-down method of regulating emissions around the world and go with a bottom-up method of having countries bring to bear their nationally determined contribution on how they're going to fight climate change. It's really that simple. And those NDCs get implemented through a number of decisions, and a lot of them have provisions for flexibility, i.e., I can be really ambitious if I can use markets to make the energy transition easier. And the markets provision of the Paris Agreement, which really looks to getting us to keeping a 1.5 degree maximum warming around the world, those markets provisions are really important in allowing for that flexibility. And they're all contained in our article called Article 6.
Thank you so much, Lisa. That's really incredibly helpful for people to understand why these things are covered at COP, as well as what we're going to expect looking forward. And as you've mentioned, these COPs and Conference of Parties happen annually. And we just had COP27 last year in Egypt. And I'm wondering if you can share what some of the key successes and failures from this particular COP were.
Yeah, I will say Egypt was not an ambitious outcome. We had such a good outcome of Glasgow the year before, where we finally got the rules for implementing the markets provisions of Article 6. And we were looking to Sharm el Sheikh last year to help us with granular rules to actually get the actual accounting done and the forms done and some delineation of things that were still a little unclear that came out of Glasgow. And it didn't really happen to the extent necessary. So we're back at it this year, looking at things like what do the forms look like? what information is included in the provisions around the Article 6.4, which is the top down supervisory body mechanism for markets to happen within Article 6. We need some key clarifications around permitting and authorizations and what jurisdiction countries have to revoke or rescind their authorizations once a unit has been issued. It's really like determining, can a bank print a dollar bill and then rip it up? Or is a dollar bill a dollar bill a dollar bill until it's used?
Thank you, Lisa. That's helpful for understanding COP27 so that we know what to look forward to for COP28. And looking at progress made to date on some of these specific pieces of global carbon markets, what has been happening in the world of Article 6 and corresponding adjustments, among some other issues?
Yeah, this is the accounting piece that we're talking about. So, in the broad COP context, we're looking at things like loss and damage and funding, getting that money out there to fund that energy transition we need. In Article 6, very specifically, the accounting becomes really important. It's a market, and you can't have loose rules around accounting. So, right now, Article 6 says, 6.2 says, if you transfer a unit internationally, then there should be a corresponding adjustment. And that means if I create a unit in Papua New Guinea or Zimbabwe and I transfer it to Canada, Papua New Guinea doesn't count that full emission reduction, goes in their accounting as a plus, and it goes in Canada, the buyer country's accounting as a minus. And that's really important. And there's some debate over what type of transactions, specifically around Article 6.4, attract that kind of plus and minus accounting and which don't. And there are a lot of granular rules around that, all around authorization for use.
That's so great, Lisa. And I'm sure many of these things, if not all, will be addressed at this upcoming COP28. So, from your perspectives, what can we expect around some of these conversations at COP28? And what do you think realistically will be achieved?
From a very high level, we really are hopeful that that $100 billion a year commitment will get mobilized. We've been waiting on a number of countries to actualize that for quite some time now, a number of years. And so that's something we expect to see happen. We expect to see further determinations in and around the associated global stocktake and how things are going to unroll there. And we expect to see more on loss and damage. On Article 6 in particular, we want to see some real robust defined rules so we can get those transactions happening, get the finance flowing into the countries that need help mitigating most. And that's really, really important. The international registry is also very important in that realm as well, and who can or cannot have accounts in it, and how can those accounts be used. And then the associated sub registries and connections with national registries are increasingly important too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lisa. That's really helpful. And looking at carbon markets, we know that voluntary carbon markets were definitely a hot topic of conversation at COP27. And can we expect the same topic presence as well as actors showing up at COP28?
I think overall, we expect a slightly smaller presence. We know that the accreditations for COP28 have been restricted a little bit this year. But given that voluntary carbon markets play an integral role, they actually evolve into the Paris compliance markets. They're becoming very, very important in the overall discussion of the Paris compliance rules. So we do expect a very significant presence of voluntary market participants and enhanced consideration of the convertibility of voluntary credits and what it takes to turn voluntary action in a country into a compliance unit under the Paris Agreement. What do the forms look like? What does the accounting look like? And how do the registries cope with it? And that should be of real importance to you folks.
Absolutely. Yes. Lots of things happening on our end across registries to nail out some of these definitions and ways of working across global markets. And Lisa, before we close today, I wanted to just quickly thank you so much for your time, but also ask if you have any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to share with us and the audience.
I do actually. One thing that I'm trying not to lose sight of myself is really the urgency. If you read the IPCC's reports, the sixth assessment report in particular, we have 6 years to avert very significant existential threat to the globe. So these processes work slower than we'd like, but I'd really love to see both voluntary market participants and countries and compliance entities come to bear and come to the table with the environment and the globe in mind. We do not have time to waste.
That is such an important note to leave us with, Lisa, which is we don't have time. Action needs to happen now. Climate change is not going away. And we need partners like everybody going to COP this year to buckle down and start working and moving, even though progress has been made, more progress is needed. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you, Lauren. Real pleasure.
Pleasure being with you.